portuguesa.
Teacher to be, I have learned to integrate what I learned in the classroom to the outside world by engaging in projects like planting the trees and also empowering the society by helping the needy and the poor in our society.
I've interacted with many of our students. I've interacted with many of the students I've welcomed to the university during the service learning, and that's one way of personal growth and also interaction and getting to widen in what I do in my every single day.
I have to acknowledge that through the service learning project, I acquired project management, which is actually part of my course in leadership and management, and also as a financial analyst.
Taking part and taking action in service learning has made me as an individual learn how to live with people, learn how to work with people. In a class setup, we'd only work in small group discussions and leave. But with service learning, we work as a group and as a team to achieve a specific desired goal.
I have learned to engage others in all the projects and to work with others in order to make our society a better place to be.
The moment of just giving myself to service learning activity fully. And it's not easy for me, but I found myself it has become an easier task that I needed to at least join into service learning activities and you do them. And that was a great change to me.
Okay, service learning to me, it's a teaching and a learning strategy that integrates to community service.
Taking what I've learned in class, taking what I know from home, and putting it and actualizing it in the society.
Aprender realmente a comunicar conceptos.
We truly had to learn to communicate concepts that we see throughout our studies in our 4 years, to explain them through a series of meetings so that they are understood in a simple manner, so that they can also be aware of this, because at the end of the day, the idea is that we all participate. This is learning to see how can I, as an engineer from my field, how can I contribute to improve the social aspects? Well, the importance that my discipline can have within the communities. This approach to service learning allowed me to know that my field has an impact on real lives, and that's very important for the future and for my professional career. I think that the most relevant thing is to have developed this collaborative attitude, because necessarily when you go through the process, you have to agree on how to elaborate each project, how to distribute the tasks, among many other things that have to do with the development of an integrated work. The most important change I discovered in myself is the possibility that we have of facing unexpected things, but at the same time being responsible and doing what you have to do. Because this is something that happens in real life, and you should be able to not to let those people down, because this is not just delivering a paper, an essay or something. This is something that goes beyond that, and it has true effects on people. Personally, I think that the most important thing was to realize how satisfactory it is to use your knowledge, what you learn, to help others. It means a process, it's a win-win process, both for the organization and for the university. Implementing those knowledge that I learned at university, applying them in reality. It is showing that you can do it from your heart. Service learning. Although we spend most of our lives at the campus, at the classrooms, or over Zoom sessions, there's a world outside, and we should be supporting it.
Uniservitate and Universidad Católica Portuguesa invite you to participate in the second Global Symposium Uniservitate, Service Learning, Integral Education, transformative duality. With the participation of representatives from 26 countries from 5 continents, from more than 30 universities, and worldwide leading specialists. This second edition of the Uniservitate Symposium, aimed at educational authorities, researchers, faculty body, and university students, is a great opportunity to share experiences and reflections with experts, to discuss the contribution of service learning to the identity and mission of all higher education institutions, and to the empowerment of students as responsible agents of change. In response to Pope Francis's plea and in support of the Global Compact on Education, we call on you to contribute with your hands, head, and heart to continue creating novel and meaningful proposals that will help us face social challenges.
Muy bienvenidos, muy
Welcome. Welcome all to the second Global Symposium of Uniservitate. It's a program that is coordinated by CLAIS, the Latin American Service Learning Center, that now is organizing this event with the Catholic University of Portugal. Our brothers and sisters from Portugal will be the hosts somehow. They will be welcoming us to this event. This symposium was organized in collaboration with the International Federation of Catholic Universities and as a response to the Global Compact on Education. And it will gather over 1,000 people from 5 continents, whether you are in Buenos Aires, Nairobi, Manila, Madrid, Boston, or the city of Wuhan in South Sudan, where we have our latest participants, the ones that have registered the latest. We're going to share these today on the specific pedagogical contribution of service learning to Catholic higher education to, among other things, achieve a more integral education that combines heart, head, and hands, as the Pope says. Under the motto service learning, integral education, and transformational spirituality, for several months we have called for papers. We have received over 100 papers based on 3 themes that will be presented in roundtables and in posters in a virtual interactive gallery during this symposium. As you can see in the agenda in the web, www.uniservitate.org, we will have panels with distinguished speakers from all over the world, because we want this to be a true celebration of our enthusiasm for the transformational power of education globally. And for that, this symposium is being translated into English, Spanish, Portuguese, French in the channels that you will find in the description of this broadcasting. You can participate over the YouTube chat, and all the videos of the panels and roundtables will be posted there in our channels. For the opening of this symposium, we have a deluxe panel that I will introduce in more detail, but I would just like by thanking the participation of Cardinal Manuel Clemente, the Patriarch of Lisbon, Portugal, also the presence of Monsignor José Ornelas, the Bishop of Setúbal and President of the Episcopal Conference of Portugal. We will also have Maria Rosa Tapia, the coordinator of the Uniservitate program, and the rector of the Portuguese Catholic University, Dr. Isabel Capeloa Hill. We're also going to have some surprises. So we are going to introduce them all in a few minutes in more detail, but to begin this opening panel, we're going to receive some brief words from Cardinal Manuel Clemente, the Patriarch of Lisbon. Cardinal Manuel Clemente has a degree in history from the University of Literature of Lisbon, theology from the Portuguese Catholic University, and the PhD in historical theology at that university, where he was also a teacher, so he must feel at home now. Manuel Clemente is the bishop since 2000, the bishop of Oporto in 2007, and in 2013 he was appointed the 17th Patriarch of Lisbon. Pope Francis appointed him as cardinal in 2015. He has written books and papers at history, theology, and pastoral, and he's a former student of this university that is hosting us today, and the great chancellor of the Portuguese Catholic University. Go ahead, Cardinal, the floor is yours.
Don Manuel, disculpa, el micrófono.
Un micrófono.
Son cosas que pasan en nuestro...
Things happen.
Sempre porque a gente quer estar em silêncio e depois quando é preciso ainda está.
Indeed, because we keep mum, and then when we have to speak, we always forget to turn the microphone on. Can you hear me now? Asks the Cardinal. A very good morning, good afternoon. Allow me to welcome you with a great deal of esteem, those taking part in the second Global Symposium Uniservitate. Service learning, integral education, transforming spirituality. It is highly timely, such an endeavor, because we need teaching connected to society and its needs, both nationally and internationally. We have to learn more and better in light of the complex nature as well as interconnection of topics dealt with by universities. These days, from climate to refugees, from labor to to the employment of youth, from the guarantee of fundamental rights to the empowerment of international organizations to the benefit of all nations, particularly those facing larger difficulties, all requires learning, research, and strengthened implementation. But it further needs of a greater connection between teaching, learning, and society, between what people study and what people request by way of concrete need with eyes fixed in their horizon. In a nutshell, we want study to become ever more service. Therefore, studying means learning how to serve with practical actions and with a permanent intent. Concretely expressed by those who teach and by those who learn. It's not just learning to serve, but also learning by serving. And science will then help solve the issue of employability of ex-students. And that's precisely why universities were born, to serve societies in health, in law, in arts, in humanities, in matters of thought and of spirituality. Those who came out of universities were licensed, in other words, publicly empowered to serve and work for the greater benefit of all. Today, to recover such a tradition, turning it towards the present days and the future is of the essence. I therefore pay tribute to this symposium, and I bid heartfelt success to all those taking part therein.
So thank you, the Patriarch of Lisbon. So again, to continue with our welcoming words. Now with Jose Ornelas Carvalho. He has a PhD in biblical theology from the Portuguese Catholic University, where he was also a faculty member, so he's also at home now. In 2015, he was appointed by Pope Francis as Bishop of Setúbal. Since 2020, he's been the president of the Episcopal Conference of Portugal.
Buenas tardes o buenos días a todos y a todas. Es con un grandissimo gusto
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to lend my voice for this message that we received from Pope Francis. And also, it's also an honor for me to welcome you all in our house, in our university, where I was educated and where I've been also a faculty member. And it's still an inspiration for my life. It's also a great joy for me to participate in this symposium, because the role of universities in the world today, in the cultural dialogue for a future that is complex, and so it requires education and training, but it also requires a dialogue with society. This is also evident in the message from the Pope that I'm going to read. I'm not going to quote Cervantes, or I'm not going to use the accent, the tone, the Spanish of Pope Francis. I'm going to speak in my mix of Portuguese and Spanish, which is also multinational, not only in our peninsula, but also in many other parts of the world, and particularly in South America. And so now I'm going to read the message from the Pope. His Holiness Pope Francis extends a cordial greeting to the organizers and participants at the second Global Symposium under the title Service Learning, Integral Education and Transformative Spirituality. Promotes the Uniservitate academic network and encourages you to keep working for Catholic educational institutions strengthen their identity and mission with projects that go forth that do not focus just on the academic aspects, but educate the heads, the hearts, and the hands of their graduates in solidarity and fraternity. Furthermore, the Pope urges you so that in this particularly hard time of the pandemic, you may promote relations and collaboration among the various institutions, creating a culture of dialogue that may respond to the deep wishes of our society by breaking with individualism, sectarism, and the rejection that threaten it. With these feelings, the Holy Pope imparts the apostolic blessing as a gift of abundant heavenly goods. Vatican City, July the 12th, 2021, and it's signed by Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Secretary of State. Those are the words by the Pope. Thank you so much, Monsignor José Ornelas. It's an honor for us to have you here, as well as Manuel Clemente. And we also feel blessed in this beginning. And thank you particularly for sharing the message from His Holiness that shows how close he is to us. And this also starts this symposium, confirming our faith and our task ahead, that is the mission of transforming Catholic education globally. So right now, we're going to continue with a few words from Maria Rosa Tapia. She is the coordinator of the Uniservitate program, the Porticus initiative, coordinated by the Latin American Service Learning Center. And besides coordinating Uniservitate, she also coordinates higher education at CLICE. and she's a member since it was founded in 2002. She has a degree in education, educational technologies, also from San Diego University. She's a specialist and magister in education technologies from the University of Buenos Aires. She imparted courses and workshops for educational institutions and organizations in the 5 continents. Maria Rosa, the floor is yours. Thank you, Luis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us in the second Global Symposium of Uniservitate. We are truly excited and grateful to the over 1,000 people from 45 countries that have registered, the 257 people that sent 116 papers, and particularly to all the messages that we received from Cardinal Mario Poli that sent his blessing with a beautiful chapter for our new book in the Uniservitate collection. The messages we've just heard from Cardinal Manuel Clemente, Monsignor José Ornelas Carvalho, and particularly the message from His Holiness Pope Francis, and also from the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres. They all encourage us to keep working for education, for solidarity and fraternity. To all of us that are part of Uniservitate, it's a joy to make this culture of dialogue a reality by combining in this multicultural space a place to share experiences, do research, reflect, and discuss on the pedagogy of service learning, its spiritual dimension, and its contribution to the identity and the mission of higher education institutions. The purpose of Uniservitate is to generate a systemic change through the institutionalization of service learning as a tool for educational institutions, higher institutions, can truly accomplish its mission to offer integral education to the new generations, involving them in an active engagement with the problems of our times. Uniservitate, as Luis explained, is a Portuguese initiative, and it's coordinated by the Latin American Center of Service Learning, CLAIS. From CLAIS, from the Global South, and under the motto, Learning Serves and Service Teaches, we've been developing service learning, both in formal and informal education, for over 20 years now. And throughout this time, we provide advice and training to policymakers, NGO leaders, educators, and students looking for the answers to the deep wishes of our society. For the development of the Uniservitate program, we want to move forward on 3 lines of action: investigate and reflect on the spiritual dimension of service learning, as in this symposium, to create a global network of regional hubs, friend institutions, educational, higher education institutions, and networks, and supporting educational institutions for the institutionalization of service learning. In these 2 first years of the program, we've managed to make the first steps that today we would like to share with you throughout this brief summary of our journey. So we're going to share a short video.
Hey, good morning, Andy. How are you? After this video, I have nothing to say but to take advantage of this opportunity to thank all the institutions, each one of the participants that make it possible for Uniservitate to be a global cultural, resilient community. We would like to thank the portfolio manager of Vital Catholic Thought for his vision and experience, and the cooperation of the Portuguese Catholic University in the organization of this second symposium through the rector, Ms. Capeloa Hill, and Rita Fiberfoa, with whom we created a wonderful fraternal team. We thank the cooperation of the International Federation of Catholic Universities, and we conduct this symposium together in adherence to the Global Educational Pact. We hope that these 2 days will find us together fraternally to strengthen our vision, to educate each person as a whole being, hand, head, heart, and soul. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria Rosa. Thank you for your remarks. And also thank you for leading this project, incarnating it with all your experience and trainer. We are close to you on a day-to-day basis, and we know that there's been a lot of effort behind on the part of people and institutions, and led by your leadership role. Let's walk into the end with the person that will be officially opening this symposium from the Portuguese Catholic University. Isabel Capeloa Gil is the rector of the Portuguese Catholic University. She's the president of the International Federation of Catholic Universities. She has a PhD with that university, and she's the rector. She has authored plus 140 papers, and they've been translated into English, Portuguese, French, Spanish, and Italian. She's an honorary member of IGFR from the London University, and she is a guest professor at the Macau San Jose University. Welcome, Isabel.
Your Excellency, Reverend Jose Ornelas, who's the president of the Episcopal Board. The Cardinal has left us. Dear Maria Rosa, Maria Nieves, Richard Bros, all the friends who contributed to the organization of this colloquium, all the participants who from all over the world come together in these 2 days to celebrate service learning.
Prazer para a Universidade Católica Portuguesa organizar em colaboração com a CLAIS este segundo simpósio global Uniservitate, subordinado ao tema Service Learning, Integral Education and Transformative Spirituality. No mundo desafiante como aquele em que vivemos, a educação é determinante para a construção de um futuro sustentável e resiliente, sobretudo para convocar para um projeto de transformação e elevação os protagonistas do mundo a vir, que são os jovens. Num tempo de explosão de novos e contraditórios
new and contradictory protagonisms, this means that we have to reclaim the right to do different. We have to find a proposal that has value, that does not stem from the reaction to the short-term trends or needs, which anticipates rather the major social changes, leaving no one behind. An education that will shape the protagonists of the future should also incentivize taking risks, because to learn and to grow is a daring business, as Pope Francis says. To be a protagonist, you have to be able to fail, to restart again. To be a protagonist does not mean that you are only wanting to play the leading role. If we look to the origin of the expression, which brings the prefix protos, which means first, and agonistes, which is formed from agon, which means he who struggles, we see that protagonist is the fighter, the struggler, who goes into the battle, who dares to take the action forward. The protagonist is the mobilizer, who opens up new paths in a resilient and innovative way, without flinching.
For my final remarks. Dear friends, in view of a convocation to provide quality education in the service of the common good, Service learning is arguably an approach that truly embodies the call for what Pope Francis, in the audience to the diplomatic corps accredited at the Holy See last January, refers to, and I quote him, an educational vision that can encompass a broad range of life experiences and learning processes in order to enable young people individually and collectively to develop their personalities. Education is not limited to school and university classrooms. It is principally ensured by strengthening and reinforcing the primary right of the family to educate and the right of churches and social communities to support and assist families in raising their children, quote end. An education that steps outside the academic realm, then, that plunges into the murky and complex social reality of different communities is a challenge that Catholic institutions must embrace if they are to fulfill a mandate for a practice that is centered on the integral development of the person and one that truly reacts and works to solve the complex problems of our times. Following the demands of Pope Francis for a church that goes forth, Catholic higher education must fulfill its mission of going forth, acting collaboratively to further the advancement of knowledge for the common good, to provide high-quality teaching articulated with the needs of society, aimed at transforming potential, which is the matter our students are made of, into astute, creative, and ethical professionals. Here at the Universidade Católica Portuguesa, we are committed to a curriculum transformation developed with the support of Porticus to implement service learning across the whole of the university. The project CAPS, Catholic University and Service Learning, Innovation and Social Responsibility, is aimed at institutionalizing service learning methodology, valuing the active participation of students in community activities and experiences across a wide range of areas, fostering as well an integration of communal work with the SDGs. The alignment of purpose between service learning and the SDG goals adopted by the United Nations is clearly expressed also in the very generous message that the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, has conveyed to this assembly, that I shall have the honor of reading next. But before I do, I wish to thank the partnership with CLAIS that made this symposium possible, particularly Maria Nieves, Maria Rosa, and also the generous support of Porticus and the support of the International Federation of Catholic Universities, IFCU. A special word to the team at Católica that made this possible as well. And to all the participants, may this be an occasion for an insightful and fruitful dialogue with the community of purpose to foster and develop quality education throughout the globe and to empower new protagonists for the common good. And now I shall read the message of Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, in Portuguese. Mensagem para o simpósio da Universidade Católica Portuguesa. Saúdo com muito gosto este simpósio.
I would like to greet the symposium that is organized by the Portuguese Catholic University together with the Latin American Center for Learning and Solidarity, and I greet you with great pleasure. I began my career in the universities, and I know how crucial universities can be in transforming and leading societies forward. The commitment of and input of universities is crucial and cannot be waived. The world in which we live faces huge challenges in a context of deep divisions, and we are facing a multitude of crises. The COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, conflicts and tensions, geopolitical conflicts and tensions, a wave of mistrust and misinformation, disinformation, threats to human rights, science under attack. Now more than ever, we need to overcome our divisions, to reduce human suffering, to restore confidence, and to inspire hope. Education of high quality lies at the heart of meeting these challenges. Universities are called upon to fulfill a key role in searching for solutions and promoting the 2030 agenda. The challenges worldwide that we face cannot be overcome in an isolated way. They require collaboration, solidarity, and partnerships. They are therefore these partnerships that were set up on the basis of civil society institutions are of the highest importance, especially those which involve universities in order to carry forward sustainable development goals, in order to reduce inequality and promote dignity and hope for the entire mankind. I hope that you will have the best possible success in the symposium. Antonio Guterres, thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias. Doctora Isabel Capeloa Gil, quien nos da la bienvenida a este simposio también.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isabel Capeloa, and this helps us open the activities. The message is testimony of how global this symposium is with so many languages. And I would like to thank for this hospitality and for sharing the generous message of the current Secretary General of the UN, who encouraged us to continue with this challenge of educating for solidarity, fraternity, and peace in a world that needs this on an urgent basis. In closing this opening panel, I would like to thank all the panelists and then make three very important announcements before I present the next activity following this opening panel. I have three messages, especially for participants from around the world who are joining us. I would first like to say that all the information is on our web, uniservitate.org, where you will have access to all the symposium information and to our virtual poster gallery. This symposium is being translated into Spanish, English, French, Portuguese on the channels that you will find the description of this transmission. From there, those who wish will be able to listen to and participate in plenary sessions. Those who wrote or who signed in for panel sessions, they will have access through the emails you signed on with. This will be published on the symposium records. They will be freely downloadable, and some of the papers of this symposium will be published on a monograph of higher education and service learning on Breeders. That will also be freely downloadable. I'd like to break this good news. It is freely downloadable and available from the Uniservitate web page, the book, Pedagogy of Service Learning and the Teachings of Catholic Church in the Spanish version. We will soon find it in the French and English version. This book is part of a collection that Uniservitate is currently editing. Following these announcements, we conclude the opening panel by thanking again our panelists. Please stay online because we will soon begin with the next session, exploring the spiritual dimension of service learning pedagogy and its contribution to spirituality of a Catholic university, with Professor Nieves Tapia and Luisa Mota Ribeiro in her role as the moderator. Thank you very much. We will be back on in a few seconds.
Muy bien, nuevamente, muy bienvenidos.
Again, welcome to get started with this dialogue, the first activity on the symposium following the opening panel. And in getting started with this dialogue, we will give the floor to Luisa Mota Ribeiro, who will be the moderator of this dialogue, and Professor Nieves Tapia. Luisa Mota Ribeiro has a PhD on education. She's an attached professor at the Education School of the Portuguese University, and she's the member of the think tank for human development. Since 2020, she's been responsible, together with Carmo Tomudo, of the Unit for Development of People, CAPS project, Catholic University and Service Learning, Innovation and Social Responsibility. She's joining the efforts of the university to implement and institutionalize service learning, encouraging pedagogical innovation and social accountability. Welcome, Luisa. And we will give the floor now to Professor Nieves Tapia, the founder and director of the Latin American Center of Service Learning. She started in 2009 the programs of service learning with the Ministry of Education of Argentina. She has a degree in history. She's a founding member of the Directive Council of the International Association of Investigators in Service Learning. She's been guest speakers in 5 continents. She has authored several books and articles in Spanish, English, Portuguese, and Spanish. She has inspired a lot of what will be happening here and tomorrow, and she's been a source of inspiration for many educators who have devoted their hearts, heads, and hands to service learning. Welcome, and go ahead, Lisa. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I will try to speak Spanish. I apologize if any of my remarks are not clear. It is my pleasure to be here in this moment, such an important and special one that is so significant, sharing this panel with Professor Nieves Tapia. This is my privilege. I feel that what is happening today is service learning right here, right now, because we are exchanging knowledge, we are exchanging experiences and reflections, and we are also transforming one another. And this is one of the themes that is part of our symposium. The name of her presentation is Exploring the Spiritual Dimension of Pedagogy of Service Learning and its Contribution to Spirituality from a Catholic University. I would like to say that participants can ask questions or make comments on YouTube. So we will listen to the lecture of Professor Nieves Tapia, and then we can share. I can read questions and we can exchange. But before, we will pay attention to Professor Nieves Tapia's wisdom. It is my pleasure to give the floor to you. Thank you so much, Luisa. I would like to thank also Luis and all the remarkable panel that we have during the opening ceremony. We are all moved and quite thankful at having heard the message of His Holiness Pope Francis and the Secretary General of UN, and the remarks of the keynote speakers that opened the floor for this event. Now we have to put our hands to work. And based on this, I would like to share a presentation. And as Luisa said, following my presentation, we will have a space to engage in dialogue. So in the meantime, I encourage you to share your questions, your comments, and contributions on the chat so that even during the virtual life that we are having, we can still engage in dialogue, which we hope we can share face to face next year on the corridors, sharing coffee on our 3rd symposium next year. That's my hope, to be able to directly and personally say hello to participants. I decided to organize my presentation based on 3 big themes, as are the main big themes of this symposium. And even though I believe that all of those who are online here, we know what we talk about when we talk about service learning, I should like to devote a few remarks to talk about what we talk when we talk about service learning. We know that many universities carry out practical work, as is the case in laboratories, and this is an active way. But if we bring it out of the campus, and if we use the very same knowledge and skill sets in order to help with those who are testing people to see whether they are COVID positive or to immunize people, as is the case of several students around the world. These are photos of students from public universities from Buenos Aires and Greater Buenos Aires. The combination of learning and service learning to the community is what we refer to as service learning. What these practices have in common is that they develop in an active manner the academic content and professional competencies. Service learning gives protagonism to students. I very much liked what the rector of the Portuguese university said, you know, protagonists as those who fight, those who truly modify reality. It allows us at the same time to develop these skill sets for citizenship and for life, you know, soft skills. In traditional education, this is not always enabled, and it also allows us to put into practice the values that the missions from public and private universities speak of, but not always do we find a way to implement this into real practice. So service learning is quality learning with a plus, with an extra quality, considering its incidence on the society. In order to put this into record and so that you can search the literature, out of the thousands of potential definitions in all languages about service learning, we underscore these three that are fundamental in order to identify a practice such as that of service learning. Because in many universities, they carry out service learning even when they don't call it that way. We recognize service learning practices when there is a solidarity activity that is offered to the community, when there's an active protagonism of students from the onset of the project, and when there is a protagonism of educators, teachers, by articulating or coordinating the content on the syllabus with what is carried out on site, developing competencies and engaging in research. We could give lots of examples. Lately, I saw one video on YouTube of colleagues of the Chilean Catholic University, where advanced students of physiotherapy carry out their tele-rehab practices for the specific benefit of the elderly in the framework of an agreement with the district in the region, with the municipality. For this program, they work directly with elderly patients, and a number of virtual materials have been developed that are available on the website of the district and of the university. This all relates to a comprehensive training. On the video, one of the students says, "This practice allowed me to understand the profile of our graduate program, because this that we say that is so nice to be a respectful professional of human dignity, of human life, as ethical principles, they saw it brought down to real life in this project. This is a project that is based on a specific discipline, but there are projects that encompass several disciplines, such as that of friendly cities. This is a project developed with an entire network of organizations of the civil society, where they approached this very specific issue, that of helping people with disabilities, and with participation of schools in town, they were able to help people with a software, and such as Google Maps that shows us the quickest way to get from point A to point B. Well, in this case, this shows the path that is free from obstacles to get or to move around in town. This is a project with students from engineering, law, and education. And university students and high school students developed training for citizenship and technological skills. This is what we refer to in a few words when we talk about service learning. But when we work in Uniservitate, we want to go beyond nice projects. These sometimes are projects that can be really good, but they may come out of the sole initiative of a single teacher. When that teacher moves to another university, that gets lost down the path. At Universitate, we are articulating with institutions that have programs that are policies of the institution. These help have space of institutional continuation, such as the one where Luisa participates. They help coordinate the action of multiple academic units, and therefore they develop programs that won't not just be multidisciplinary, but interdisciplinary, generate multiple alliances with society. And since they can coordinate institutionally, they bring about greater impact, a greater participation with the community organizations, and also to generate spaces for training for all participants, teachers, students, and community partners. I wrote the logos of some of the many programs that are related to this project. These processes, as we know, they don't happen overnight. The second symposium is part of a process that, for some institutions, has been carried forward for many years. These processes find how the decisions are converged, those from the top down, university policies, the contribution by the rectors, as we've seen. The case was with the rector of the Portugal Catholic University. These institutional supports are really important because they can contribute sustainability to processes. They enable evaluation thereof, and they render them visible in the institution and outside from them. But this political decision requires a movement from the bottom up. A specialist from the United States a long time ago said that service learning is the only educational reform that will always get started from the bottom up. Students and teachers are the first to learn what it is all about. And along those lines, in many institutions, we are creating this indispensable critical mass of involved teachers and students who are the ones who put into practice partnerships with community stakeholders, those who carry out practices to encourage the participation of other students and other teachers. They have the creativity and the originality and adjustment to the local reality that no book by its own can secure, and no political decision or institutional decision at a national level can secure either. So service learning is a pedagogical innovation. At Uniservitate, at CLAIS, those of us in this symposium, we underscore its holistic capacity, its capacity to truly generate projects, education projects that should be truly comprehensive. They should encompass the head, the heart, and the hands. This statement by Pestalozzi that became a fad again thanks to Pope Francis, but it is actually related to, contemporary pedagogy. Lord's report that said we had to learn to do and live together, or, competencies for the 21st century. Contemporary pedagogy says that the right education for the next generations is one that should be holistic and comprehensive. And along those lines, service learning allows us to focus on an integral, comprehensive education, bringing theory with practice together. Educational institutions are indebted because there's this foundational inertia, you know, the ivory tower university, the encyclopedic-based university, theory separated from practice. Service learning is one that is centered on those who learn, students as the key protagonists, and it is related to three big pedagogies. It is part of three very current dated pedagogical flows in the world pedagogy. Project-based learning. In service learning, we learn based on projects. We learn based on problems that are not created in the classroom. They are real life problems that stem from the community, and these are projects where there is research and action and participation. There's the participation of students additionally to community members and educators. This comprehensive education is not just a statement that we pay lip service to. In the last 40 years, there's been a lot of research on service learning, showing the positive impacts of service learning in students in connection to their academic and cognitive development, developing critical thinking, learning to do, developing a number of skill sets for life and for work, learning to be and to live together by training the citizens and developing social and emotional competencies. For over 15 years, there was an article published that was called Head, Hearts, and Hands. And it was a summary of the status of affairs of research done on service learning at the time. And they were ordered based on these three big themes. In Uniservitate, and not just for Catholic universities, we add a dimension to it, which is the spiritual one, that of the connection with the transcendental part of things, religious training in universities with religious affiliation. Therefore, integral education encompasses, you know, the phrase that was coined by Maria Rosa in the opening, hands, heart, and soul. And when it comes to that, I believe that the spiritual dimension passes through the three central dimensions by Pestalozzi, and it relates to everything. And this is what I will try to discuss during this symposium. But vis-a-vis all this research that show the positive impact of service learning, I would like to underscore with a lot of realism that this doesn't happen spontaneously. It is not that it dawns on us automatically. Just because we have organized a project, will it translate itself into an integral education? For there to be integral education, projects have to be planned so that we can develop this integral nature of competencies and knowledge. It is very relevant even today, what for over 20 years was stated by Cooper, a specialist of the International Florida University. When the youth is involved in service learning activity, it might as well be that they don't learn anything. It's just an educational experience that will have no imprint on their lives. Even worse, you can learn, even with the best of intentions, you can learn the wrong lesson. There is a lot of prejudice and there are stereotypes that can be reinforced or can surface up when activities do not render themselves to reflection or when they are poorly planned. And I would like to focus on this because, regretfully so, there's a lot of goodwill in projects where young people who have lots of privileges and who have a number of benefits around themselves, they teach them that it's good enough to go once a year to see how the poor live or to have a dialogue with the elderly or to participate in an activity with children. That's all they can ever do. That's enough, and that's really good. And these will be the ruling classes of tomorrow. They believe that if they go to, a dinner for the benefit of a foundation, they've done good for society, all the good they can do. That's actually not suitable. I would like to focus on reflection and planning. Many of you may have heard from our literature about this tool that we have used for long years in class, and it's been adopted by many, even by the Ministry of Education from Italy, in order to know how to plan a good quality service learning project. As can be seen, and I won't go into the details of this journey, but as you see, it consists of 5 big stages. There's 3 processes that are cross-sectional to any good project. Along the project, we assess, we record, we systematize what happens, we communicate it, and along the entire project, we need to reflect on the practice. And I believe that for the topic that we are focused on in this symposium, reflection is critical, it is central. A long time ago, North American specialists were talking about the 4 C's. In English, they are continuous, connected, challenging, and contextualized reflection. These 4 features of any good reflection are important because sometimes we mistake reflection with, how did you feel about it? Oh, I feel really good, it was cool. Okay, then that's the end of reflection. That is actually not the case. It should be a moment of challenge where we challenge our intellect, where we challenge our hearts to see what happened to us. Experience is not what happens to a person, it is what the person does with what it happened to them. Reflection is the moment where we stand for a while to see what happened to us in the service learning project. And here, if we go deeper into the subject matter, I would like to get into what many call specifically ethical reflection. These frames service learning projects. As the specialist in Mexican popular education said, Mr. Hurtado, in every educational proposal, there's either implicitly or explicitly an ethical framework that underpins it. Sometimes the ethical frameworks that we write in our big statements as a university do not correlate to the implicit ethical framework that actually develops in our lessons, in our chairs. Sometimes, and even with the best of wills in the middle, there's this individualistic, selfish ethic that comes to surface. We go to the university to do well in life, to make more money, and I do not really care what happens to the rest of the world. That's an ethical framework that either implicit or explicitly we are fighting against on a daily basis. This is one that a great deal of our society pressurizes on a daily basis, even when the politically correct discourses claim otherwise. If we are met here, if we are gathering here, it is because we want to train professionals who will be good professionals, who will have a good professional history, a good background, but they should also know how to use their professions for the service, for the benefit of the societies they live in. As the Secretary General of the UN said, we need for our students to know how to use their knowledge in order to react to the big challenges of the planet, the future challenges we are living in. So this drives into this epistemological reflection. What knowledges do we produce? For who do we produce them? I take these photos from a project of several veterinary programs of several institutions in Latin America. Many times they taught in the chairs of big mammals to treat horses that are athlete horses, or horses, race horses, or those horses that are raised in big ranches. But when they asked to take care of the horses of these families who regretfully so continue to make a living on scavenging, on picking cardboard and waste to recycle and make a living on. This, which politically speaking, if we want to be politically correct, we will call them formal urban recyclers. When these schools of veterinary started engaging in service learning, then they thought that they had to start learning together with those people who live in so underprivileged conditions, living at the peripheries, what the projects were, what the problems were that affected their horses with bony deformities because of the overburden, gastric problems because of the crap they eat. And all these things hadn't been studied up until that point in the School of Veterinary, in the veterinary program. So these spaces of clinics for horses, of informal recyclers, became a valuable space of practice for students. They also became, you know, a space of research. And all these chairs are presenting papers in international congresses on equine pathologies in vulnerable urban settings. And I believe that this is a good example that service learning not only articulates teaching and commitment and social accountability, it also has to articulate research. Service learning has to be instrumental so we can ask ourselves whether what we are doing research on is relevant, whether what we are doing research is truly a contribution to our societies, or whether it is something that is just useful for us to publish papers that will only be read by 5 people. This epistemological reflection involves, in many cases, an innovative aspect. You know, we have been focusing on this for the last 50 years, the necessary dialogue of academic knowledge with popularly held knowledge, you know, local, ancestral, native, depending on how you want to call them in each context. Academia feels that it knows everything, but it actually needs to come close to reality of the local ones who live in the place. They can teach us, diagnose problems with greater clarity and find solutions that will truly be effective and timely. And when it comes to universities that are situated in continents where we were colonized by the first settlers, then service learning helps us in this quest of decolonizing knowledge and looking for university models that will be truly relevant for our cultural roots, that will underscore our identity, our culture, and our problems.
So in that sense, there are contents for reflection. In Argentina, a few years ago, it was summarized on these 4 topics. Our students, so as not to do naive practices, they need to reflect on the socio-economic and political context they are in. Whether they are from engineering school or veterinarian school, they need to conduct this reflection. They need to be able to reflect on the values that are at stake, on the human rights that are involved, and also at a more personal and group level, what were the dynamics established in the working group and with the community, and what have we learned in this specific practice of service learning? These 4 topics under Uniservitate, we are adding to them a 5th aspect, that is the reflection purely spiritual. And here I'm going to mention a text from Pushpalata from United World on Christian education in Asia. And the first publication of our Uniservitate collection, you will be able to find this together with the proceedings of the first symposium. Mercy spoke about the great experience that Asian universities have in their dialogue among big religions within the same university. Perhaps a Catholic university has a majority, perhaps, of Buddhist students in the country. And they say spirituality wonders about the meaning of life, how to connect with oneself and with the others, and how to develop a life project. This is a question that students from all universities ask themselves, whether they are religious or not, public or private, because at their age at university, that's the age when you ask those big whys and you define the meaning of your life project. So contributing to that individual reflection, helping them get to know themselves better, to be connected with the others and develop their own life philosophy, well, eventually connecting to a superior being. This is valid, I think, for any university, whether or not it's a Catholic university. But it's essential for those universities that, as part of their mission and the identity, we are Catholic universities. It's especially important for us. This spiritual reflection can be at this more generic level of a spiritual reflection about the meaning of life, or it can be a specifically religious reflection. And here I would like to mention something that Pope Francis frequently mentions this, and it's the difference between evangelizing and a partisan approach. As we see in politics and in the past, perhaps the church also practices. This partisan approach is mandatory. In Argentina, we have the massive baptisms of the indigenous populations that probably they did not understand what was happening and what was the meaning of baptism. So here we're not speaking about imposing religious belief on our students. Evangelization, on the contrary, is a proposal that, by respecting the freedom of the others, expresses its own belief, first with facts, and then, if it's necessary, also with words. And in that sense, I wanted to use this image of the final judgment of Michelangelo at the Sistine Chapel. I don't know if perhaps it's quite ironic in this idea by Michelangelo in the chapel where the cardinals that during the Renaissance were actually princes of the church, in that meeting hall of the princes, he presented all these human beings naked, that in their final day Jesus would not ask them what had been their position in church, and he's not going to ask us what was our position at university. He's going to ask us as all, were you hungry? I mean, I was hungry, you fed me. I was naked, you dressed me. I was alone, you accompanied me. So this image of the final judgment, I think, urges us to go back to the most essential part of our faith, that God is love, that nobody can say they love a God they don't see if they don't love the brother or sister they do see, and that it's through our works that we give testimony of our faith. So in that sense, our universities have a lot of spaces for religious education, for education of the social teaching of the church. Very often we have mandatory chairs on theology or professional ethics. And in general, we also have the university pastoral, what others call the campus ministry. And we also have spontaneous evangelizing initiatives among the youth, like the juvenile movements or the missionary movements. So an important reflection is to see that whether all these spaces are truly guiding our students so that they are truly able to pass the most important exam of all. Because even if our students do not share the Catholic faith, if the life of the university and our service learning projects are planned so that they learn to love the other through works and with the truth, then it doesn't matter what beliefs they have. They will be prepared to pass the most important exam of all on the final day. So for my religious reflection, I wanted to quote this expression that always moves me of Pope Francis in Evangelii Gaudium, when he says the imperative of listening to the cry of the poor that moves ourselves in front of the pain of the other. And we have to reread the teachings of the Word of God on mercy. And after quoting many of the texts of the Gospel in this sense, the Pope says it's a message that is so clear, so straightforward, so simple, that no ecclesiastical hermeneutics is entitled to make it relative. Sometimes I'm quite afraid that at the university we have so many beautiful speeches and discourses that sometimes our words hide the essence of the gospel. And the Pope says the reflection of the Church on these texts should not hide or weaken its exhortative meaning, but rather help assume them with courage and fervor. Why complicate what's so simple? The conceptual apparatus are there to favor contact with reality. The reality they try to explain and not to move further away from it. And I would like this last phrase to be almost the motto of Uniservitate for this symposium. We are academics, we are developing a reflection, but this reflection needs to be intended to favor contact with reality, to explain it, not to move away from it. Let's not complicate something that is so simple as the love for the others. So in that sense, so as not to complicate something that is so simple, I think another useful, it also helps us reflect on what we have in common with almost all the big religions in the world. What many philosophers call the golden rule that is present in every sacred text, not to do to others what you would, to do to others as you would have them do to you. That golden rule, I'm sorry, it's in English, but was the only image I found for each sacred text. These texts tell us that the most Catholic is also the most universal. There's nothing more Catholic than loving the others, and there's nothing more universal than loving the others. We, the Catholics, know that Catholic in its origin means universal, and sometimes we forget that our faith is a universal faith. It's a faith that makes us embrace all humanity, as the gospel says, that makes the rain fall over the good and the bad. And eventually, in that final prayer of Jesus, in the final dinner, he asks the Father for the world to be one. Well, service learning and reflection on our practice, the dialogue with the students and teachers from different religions or from no religion at all, can help us contribute to this unity of the essential, that is reciprocal love, fraternal love. So the spirituality we are trying to achieve, that will be displayed in this symposium in all the panels, and I invite you to listen to all the panels because we will hear wonderful reflections, are spirituality of communion and fraternity that specifically makes us be alert, listen to our brothers, having a dialogue with them to diagnose the needs and how to organize our service learning projects so that they are truly effective and truly service, so we can do more with the others and not so much for the others. Not to come down from the ivory tower, but rather to build together with all of our brothers and sisters. I think that this happens to many of us. We have this tension between activism and reflection. And I think that in service learning, reflection and the action and spirituality, the transformative action helps the praxis that in the centennial of Freire, we remember this especially, that concept of Paulo Freire and the necessary synthesis between action and reflection. We are not promoting a naive activism. We are not proposing volunteerism that will make the most privileged youth feel at peace with themselves. We are proposing a synthesis between action and reflection that can be a fraternal action that transforms reality. So in that sense, and now this is mainly for the teachers, a policy said that contemporary man listens better to those that provide a testimony than to those that teach. So our role as teachers that are engaged with service learning is not so much to teach, to lecture, to make speeches, but mainly to give testimony with our own life. Experience shows us that teachers that are more those that are truly and wholly engaged with the practice, those are the ones that are more followed by their students. And our role is to accompany them in teaching, in reflection, in the solidarity action, so that the students are the protagonists. And I will finish with a reflection. In 2015, when a Pope called to this big Congress on Catholic education at the Vatican City, and the document, the preparatory document, there was a question. And many Catholic universities felt they were like a fortress, this ivory tower that protects us against the wicked world that attacks us. And it's true, there's a lot of evil in the world. We are not naive in that respect. But implicitly also, many universities express this tension between the Catholic identity and being a university like any other. So a fortress university or a university like any other university. Well, we chose this image of the fountain. This was an image that was offered. This fountain of life that is open to all, available to all, whatever their beliefs and their life choices. And so during the pandemic, we had to generate this program in a different world we had to live in. We tested whether it was possible to do service learning. We proved it was possible during the pandemic. We also proved it was possible to generate this global network. And above all, we saw virtual, in-present hybrid projects flourish. And there, with our students, we were able to learn and serve. I invite you to also visit all the knowledge we produce together. We are trying to include all that in the Uniservitate collection. We have the proceedings from the first symposium, and today we are launching this, the pedagogy of service learning and the teachings of the Catholic Church. Thank you so much to all of you, those that contributed to this book, representing the communities of Uniservitate throughout the planet. To keep knowing more about these topics, I invite you to download these books, to visit the Uniservitate network, to visit the CLAIS network, where you will also find a lot of resources in Spanish, in English, and Portuguese, and a little in French also. And I would like to conclude with two quotes from the Pope. The Pope used to say to our scholars, brothers that are here also, that we are not going to change the world if we do not change education. We are convinced that with service learning, we are trying to do both things at the same time, change the world and change education. And now we have a message direct to us, where the Pope a few minutes ago encouraged us to keep working so that Catholic educational institutions strengthen their mission with projects that go forth, not just academic, but also to educate the heads, the hearts, and the hands of their graduates in solidarity and fraternity. I hope we can make this adventure a reality and that we can learn and serve one another in this beautiful seminar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nieves, for this inspiring presentation and so clear so that we can reflect on this topic that is so important. So now we have questions. So we invite all the participants to write your questions or comments. I have some questions here. I can start then. And a very important question is then to think from our university, what opportunities of spiritual development we can create in our universities. We understand that this dimension is very important. So what opportunities can we create? Should we work on this spiritual dimension explicitly, implicitly? What can you tell us about that, Nieves? I think that's a very important question. Unfortunately, there's no single recipe for that because only we know who the students are we are working with. I think that according to the group we're working with and according to the context, perhaps we can generate some spaces for reflection where we can conduct an open reflection. And perhaps I'm thinking of Asian universities that are already doing this, perhaps from an interreligious reflection where each from their own beliefs, Moorist, Hainist, Catholic, they can share from their beliefs how the service learning project favors their or enhances their religious experience. In another context, I'm thinking of Catholic universities in the developed Western world, where many of our students call themselves atheists or agnostic. We have to be very respectful of that and start this reflection from the perspective of values. I think that in a dialogue, if you are respectful and you listen to the other, you can also say what you think. As a Catholic, I can share with an atheist what happens to me as a person of faith in my service learning experience. And if it's presented as sharing in a respectful way, I think it's valid. So in this sense, I think that the reflection, although in many universities they respect a formal space and time where we sit in a round in a circle and we talk, actually reflection sometimes happens as we are on the bus going to our workplace or at a coffee shop or in a corridor. And I think that it's part of our role as educators to know when is the right time to encourage the reflection of our students in all these dimensions. Yeah, sometimes the greatest insights come when you least expect them, right? Sometimes when we are in an informal situation, we are in this situation and a new perspective comes to our mind of what we are living. And if we can pay attention to that, it's very important. Exactly, because sometimes our students tell us very naturally and very spontaneously, in the most informal moment, what's the deepest thing for them. I remember a group of students that we were coming back from a project and one told me The best thing about this project is that it helped us come out of our container. We have the Tupperware here. I don't know if it's a brand that is known all over the place, but it's a Tupperware is for sealed containers. So what this student was trying to say is that up to that moment when he had been in direct contact with poverty and the hardships of people living 15 minutes from his house that he had never met before, he had felt that suddenly the lid of that container had opened, that container where he had been living in. And this then led to a reflection with all the group that, I mean, they had all felt the same way. So that's the idea, to use those spontaneous moments. Yeah, right. Thank you. We have a question here from our colleagues at the Catholic University in Portugal, speaking about this issue of spirituality and religion. Apologies for my Spanish. I hope you can all understand me. Yes, your Spanish is perfect. And the interpreters as well, so that the participants can all follow. So since the youth are getting farther away from spirituality related to the church, and this is a question that we have received, how can service learning contribute to bring them back again, to reconnect the youth again? What should we do so that when, for instance, teachers speak about spirituality, they don't lose their students? How can we attract the youth to this dimension without moving them further away? That's a very good question. Precisely, before I was referring to these spaces, these universities with agnostic or atheist students that apparently reject institutional religion. It seems to me that there's an image that very often Chiaraluli used from physics. And he said, when you use this slope, it's easier to drag a weight that you couldn't lift otherwise. And I think that we have to think of service learning as this slope, where the entry point, the easiest part, is specific service to the others. And we all agree on that. And it seems to me that it's a good practice if you are at a Catholic university and trying to impose, because here we're inviting them to conduct a service learning activity where initially what matters is that they learn, and what matters is that they provide a specific service to the community. That is what brings us together. If at the moment of the reflection, we at a Catholic university, and we are listening to their reflections, whether atheist, agnostic, humanistic, if we can contribute to their own lay concepts. For instance, I recommend that you read the speech from Xus Martín from the University of Barcelona. It's a public lay university about the ethic of care, because the ethics of care is an ethics where we can absolutely agree whether you're a believer or not. The Millennium Development Goals, we all agree on that, whether we are believers or not. And as Catholic universities, we can contribute that Laudato Si, the Pope mentions these objectives in this way, as another contribution to a respectful dialogue. And from there, we move up along that slope to perhaps include some concepts from the social doctrine or some values from the gospel that even if, I mean, if we present them clearly, they can also be presented respectfully without scaring anybody away. I mean, I think they are scared away when we want to impose a discourse that the other party is not prepared to receive. In my experience, if we generate a relationship with the students, and one of the most wonderful things about service learning is those connections we generate with our students that cannot be generated just by lecturing. In those connections and relationships, perhaps at some point, we can dare make that question about the meaning of life. And through that question about the meaning of life, we can listen to what they think can be their life project and compare that to a life project in a believer. But we have to respect this gradual approach and not just go from the first day with a flag, because there we will be losing this battle. That was very interesting. It seems to me that we can speak about that connection, because when we speak of action and reflection, we can add this dimension of relationship connection. So we have three dimensions that are very important. And to develop, for the development of the students, well, we have experiences of action, of service, of contact with the people in a vulnerable position. There's reflection to process and to integrate the life experiences. And then there's a context of this relationship, this connection that is present that helps, because very often the youth, the students, feel, I don't know how to say it, it will be a strong impact for them. Absolutely. I think that's a key point, what you just mentioned, Luisa, because eventually education is produced through that connection between educators and students. And quoting Freire again, that connection where educator and students educate one another in connection with the world. And that happens in service learning as a triple connection, triple learning, where we are connected with the community, with the natural reality, the social reality, and we are connected. And it seems to me that among the many things that where service learning has innovated is that university brings us down from the chair and the university, the traditional space where we are the owners of knowledge and we just impart that knowledge. Because the reality is that when we go to reality, the reality challenges us and our students at the same time. It forces us to investigate things we had not investigated before, to answer questions we had not asked before. And in that sense, it seems to me that something we might investigate further on is to what extent service learning projects have an impact on that connection, or how that connection between teachers and students has an impact on service learning. Because I'm convinced, I've seen thousands of projects throughout the world, and it's the quality of that relationship between students and teachers, the one that ensures the quality of the projects. What sparks the enthusiasm of the youth, what makes them work harder than expected, with fewer credits than they deserve, is that connection that is generated.
That makes the difference. We have new questions from participants. A question that we have is how you articulate this within a context where there's, market profiles, national and international certifications that in a way look for different professionals or profiles, and then they are not considered by professional associations. Well, that's a very good question. I don't know who asked it, but it's a very good one. I can always read the names of those who asked questions. Well, it seems that on the one hand, we have to be convinced that what first matters is that service learning is a pedagogical strategy to generate academic excellence under all parameters, market and academia, and standardized tests and the conducted research in the United States under the No Child Left Behind parameters, the truth is that when you do well-articulated service learning, you learn more than if you just learn in the classroom. Our students are capable, very capable, not just of responding to the theoretical questions of the exam, they are also capable of showing job-related skills and competencies that other students who may have had, a trainship in companies where they are all asked to serve coffee to executive students with service learning students, when they are architecture students, they go to work to the most vulnerable neighborhoods. Their clients deal directly with them. And when they have to think about enhancements, refurbishing, and new constructions, they do so with the final beneficiaries in mind. And this is how they develop a professional competence, which the majority of those who graduate as architects from traditional universities do not have those skill sets. So the point of the matter is, we have to be convinced that service learning generates academic quality and competencies for the 21st century, including those required by the World Bank, the Forum, the Davos Forum, and all those. Having stated this, it is true that rankings that, seem to be the goddesses ruling the university life worldwide, the majority still measure the quality of university teaching, and I'm sorry to be brutally critical, by kilometers or miles of published papers in, journals, especially if they are published in English. If this is the main criterion to measure quality, the problem lies with the rankings. It doesn't lie with us. And along those lines, I think that Uniservitate, we should, as such, participate on the global discussion that is having place around rankings today. For less than a month now, we had the World Conference on the Taloirs Network. It brings together plus 400 universities from around the world, public, private, professional or not. And one of the big topics of discussion, and a commission was created specifically to that end, was to promote some ranking methods such as that those exist. There's an instrument to assess social responsibility or social accountability and how this can permeate the dominating rankings, how we can claim our place from them. I have no doubt that we are learning more than those who publish lots of papers. Even universities that are very well positioned in the rankings, they are leaders in service learning. I mean, the university, it's a public university. It is one of the best ranked universities in the ranking, and they have had service learning practices for over 30 years. The Catholic University in Chile is one of the best ranked in Latin America, and they've had service learning for over 20 years. So we need to render this evident. And I will be challenging here, or I will provoke a thought. We have to no longer stay on the defensive side of things. I apologize, but Argentina is very much a football country, so I'll use a sports analogy. With Messi and Maradona, we won championships because we were on the offensive side. When we had teams that only defended themselves, we always were defeated in the World Cup. So we have to stop playing defensive. Oh no, the social commitment is important because the values are important and because of identity, because we want to be good. Well, that is true. But we need to go to the offensive side of things and to talk to the serious people, to the large academicians enclosed in their laboratories, to those who are short-sighted, that give more scores to sports stadiums than social involvement and commitment. We have to say the knowledge that you are producing is not an excellent one if it is not relevant for the world we are living in. It won't excel unless it is relevant for the world we are living in. Universities that are producing relevant knowledge and significant actions to turn reality are more relevant for the society and for the world than universities that keep enclosed in the ivory tower. So let's play offensively rather than trying to defend our role in front of the serious. Let's talk to them and tell them that they cannot be serious unless they regard things in this way. That's a very inspiring notion. Thank you so much. We have another question. There's one that you may have already answered, but maybe you can add some more. How do we get the hearts of the religious leaders that sometimes teach students about their faith not to take part in any activity of Catholic universities other than only attending school? I don't know whether it is clear. Well, I'm afraid that I did understand it. There's places where we have, religious leaders whose sole concern is to have their students attend lessons. Did I get it right?
Who at times teaches students of their faith not to participate in any activities. Pienso que sí, que muchas veces es eso, y pienso que sí.
Okay. I do believe it is that. Well, I don't want to sound disrespectful. I started working with bishops being really young. I was 18 and I was part of the Archdiocese Commission of the Youth. So I talked on first name terms to many bishops. It is not out of disrespect, but my statement is, bishops, priests, they are equal, just like anybody else. They need to be loved with service. And sometimes bishops or priests may regard the Catholic University as something that is actually not part and parcel of the church communion, maybe because we are not being instrumental to their needs. Sometimes we are going out of our way to make them see that we do, and still they won't pay attention to us. That's really painful, and that's what it is. But I believe that if our projects, our service learning projects, contribute to developing, working lines of concern for the dioceses, if they are concerned about the refugees and we carry out service learning projects to benefit the refugees, or whether the diocese is concerned about the educational quality of schools, of parish schools, then we go help them. It is easier if bishops then understand what service learning is all about than if we just talk wonderfully about the benefits of service learning. So just like any other person, we have to love them and show that they are cared for with specific facts. And based on our specific facts, then we can talk wonders about what we do. Having stated this, the reality is such that many religious leaders around the world not only do not reject, but also encourage and ask forcefully that we should engage in service learning. The first one is Pope Francis. Pope Francis was the great chancellor of the Catholic University of Argentina. And when he had this role, he saw that the university had lots of small scattered social projects around the Argentine Republic, but that none of them had any down-to-earth impact. So he said that the priority of the Catholic University of Buenos Aires should be to work on the more underprivileged neighborhoods in the city of Buenos Aires. And having the students of the Catholic University of Argentina, that is placed in one of the most affluent areas downtown here, to come out and work with their soul and body in the more underprivileged neighborhoods, that's a quantum leap. That was a way into this, and it was a very enriching experience for the life of the Catholic University. As you will listen over the length of our symposium, many testimonies that speak to this. The Pope is asking for this. Many of our bishops are asking for this. And engaging in service learning is, the church that goes forth the periphery. This is what is being requested, even if some bishops are not entirely finding it all that easy to understand it. Another question, how do we stop the good intentions around service learning from generating misfortunate situations, such as misunderstandings among students or those who we serve? Well, that's a paramount question, and it is a very necessary one. This is why I talked, and this is why I quoted Cooper when he said that you might as well learn the very wrong lesson. A North American teacher who was one of the pioneers in service learning told me once that he, after long years taking his students to engage in service learning, quote unquote, in the Caribbean, he decided to stop that project altogether. Why was that so? Because he realized that his students went there for, playing around in these volunteership activities, and they would spend 3 days putting up cabins or houses with poor quality with their knowledge, to then spend one entire week on the beach. And that helped in no way to learning or to having a healthy link to the local communities, for that matter. I believe that we as educators have a responsibility to honor in front of the community and in front of the students, that of planning our projects with the necessary preparation to ensure that when the project gets started, a dialogue will have already been started with the community. Sometimes we have this poor habit of designing projects on the desktop or on the bench at universities, theoretically speaking. And a good service learning project gets started when you engage in dialogue with the community stakeholders, with community beneficiaries. A good project starts by identifying key interlocutors, establishing a dialogue, being brave enough to listen to things that we might not like to listen. I remember once in Argentina, a community leader told to one of the universities, your university sends your social workers for over 20 years to conduct surveys on us, but they never went back to us after all the time that they made us waste. So why will I take an interest in participating once again from your project? We need to be bold enough to listen to what they will have to say and to act accordingly, to take action based on those words. So there is this preparation that needs to happen with the community, and there's a preparation that has to happen with students as well. We had have to get them ready. I remember with a Kleist colleague, we coordinated for long years a service learning program for North American students that came down to Buenos Aires for service learning. And there were a number of things that we learned that we had to tell them before they would ever come down and work with communities, such as, for instance, the first time that you go to the neighborhood, you don't go there with your camera to take photos as if you were on a tour or if you went out to the zoo. You don't go with your pump-up kicks that cost far more than a family makes in a month. You'll go on tiptoes, you know, slowly but surely, to open up and listen to what they want to say and to be patient enough to know that maybe they won't be accepting you readily on the first day. This and many other things that you know about your context and your community. It is important to be part of the preparation work before the projects get started, because otherwise, well, we just land as Christopher Columbus landed on the Antilles. And we know that it wasn't a happy encounter between cultures. So we cannot land the way Colón did. We need to get ready beforehand. We have two issues in connection to teachers, professors. What is the work that needs to be carried out with professors in order for this exploration to be enabled, this spiritual exploration activities with students to be enabled? And another related question that I can read out loud right now: how do we include educators so that they deeply reflect upon issues by using ethical goals? How to work, because for us to have a reach out to students, we need to work and do something about professors. That's an excellent question indeed. And I take a look at the time assigned, and I believe that this will have to be the last question. We need to have people break. We need to allow them to break for a while, get coffee ready so they get ready for the next panel. Well, in any university, whether public or private, Catholic, religious or not, training teachers so that they can develop service learning, quality service learning is imperative. You cannot have an institutional program on service learning without investing in how you train your teachers. There's training that has to be general for all the teachers who are interested in developing service learning. I wouldn't make it mandatory because, you know, mandatory things don't have such a well reception. They are not such well received as if you give out scholarships for an international course. You know, being a candidate, applying for a scholarship will only be more interesting to anybody. Having said this, when it comes to spirituality or religious training, no one can give to others what they don't have. And I say so in two kinds of ways. The first and fundamental is, just like we have students with different beliefs and also agnostic and atheists, we all have teachers with all creeds, and we have teachers who are agnostic and atheists. And we need to be respectful, extremely respectful, because the agnostic professor might be the one who is engaged in the best service learning project because they have a lot of social calls and lots of humanistic passions. And we do have to respect, appreciate, and work hand in hand with them, providing them tools from the ethics of care and from the humanistic ethic based on the implicit values in the search for human values and sustainable development. Once this respect is in place, we also have teachers who might be Catholic because of their education, because of their upbringing. Well, you know, I got married by the church, but I never went to mass again. Some might have this flame of faith, but it's kind of fainted. And it is part of our mission and of our identity to give them a space for reflection so that they can join the personal reflection of teachers on these issues. You know, the essential evangelical values, the love for the other, service, the wonderful reflection that Pope Francis makes on the Samaritan parable and of what he says about caring about the house, the common house. And there's spaces of reflection that we can offer to those who are willing to receive it, because those who are willing to and will have a social personal development that will be better prepared to help students embark on that journey. We won't have well-trained students if we do not have well-trained teachers in the first place. How about this methodology in this spiritual dimension? Can it transform all students, teachers, institutions, both in universities and institutions in the community, the final beneficiaries? Do you believe that everybody can transform? That's absolutely true. Here, since we are only 1,000 participating in this session, it's just among us, a few of us. I can talk about a personal anecdote. A long time ago, when finishing a conference like this, I was being asked a number of questions, and a teacher told me, maybe I didn't get you quite right, professor, but basically you seem to be, you know, placing a bomb on the educating system that will eventually go off to change everything. And I said, you got me perfectly right, but let's keep it to us, or let's talk about it slowly and in a low voice. With all that I am passionate about service learning, I believe that service learning is almost a pretext. It is a pretext to improve our education, to improve, to change our educational institutions, and to learn in a different way, to have more relevant institutions that will better serve our society, and in order to change the world around us that we are part of. So I honestly believe that service learning can be a tool that will help us change education and that can help us change the world, and that all of us could be candidates to participate from our places, from the places we can. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your moderation. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And let's keep moving forward towards the end. I would like to say that it's been my big pleasure to have been in this role. We all can have this challenge ahead of us, that of carrying this idea forward, an idea of connection, connection with oneself, connection with other people, and connection with a higher power, as has been the case with your presentation. This is very inspiring. We can always suggest that we can make our own reflection. Thank you so much, Nieves, for your inspiring presentation. This has been at a moment where we got started with this global symposium. I would like to thank those that are joining us in the beginning of this event, and you are invited to browse our website with the agenda of the event, summaries presented, the posters, galleries, and this is where you'll be able to drop your comments. You are all welcome to participate. Please remember that the next activity will get started at 1 p.m. local time of Argentina, at 5 p.m. local time of Portugal. The panel is called An Ecumenic, Interreligious and Humanistic Vision on Spirituality, Fraternity and Service. So you're all invited to stay tuned with us so we can share much more and keep learning together. Nieves, thank you very much. and see you all later. Thank you, and thank you all for your comments and questions. So see you later on the next session. That's for sure. Bye-bye.